And to conclude this, I would like to talk today about a theory. It's a theory of human behavior. The whole reason why you watched yesterday's movie, and I know the movie was long, but it was good, and I didn't ask anything else of you yesterday, was so that we have something in common. So as I talk about the theory of human behavior, you and I can relate to the same thing. Okay? Okay, in the 1950s, there was a man by the name of Abraham Maslow, which came up with a theory that was used to explain human behavior. And it was called Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Now, the entire theory, okay, even though it's like 60 years old, is still in use today. So it was a very, very good theory. The purpose of the theory was try to explain why we do the things we do, and it can also be used to predict how people might act depending upon their circumstances. The theory has two things behind it. Okay, it is based on two different things. One is that this theory is what is called a hierarchy. Okay, meaning that certain things have to happen before other things will happen. Okay, and I'll talk more about that in a second. The other precedent on this theory is that human needs exist. In other words, all humans have various needs. And if a need is not being fulfilled, we tend to focus on it. Okay, so two things. One, we have needs, and two, these needs are based on a hierarchy. In other words, some needs are more important than others. Now, what he has done to make this a visual theory, okay, it was actually Abraham Maslow that came up with this idea. He's put all of these needs on a pyramid, okay, with the idea that the base of the pyramid holds up everything which is above it. And with the idea that the base, the lower levels of this pyramid, are actually more important and they hold up everything which is above it. Okay, so again, in the case of Maslow's hierarchy, the lower levels have to be fulfilled before you can move up the pyramid. And the idea is that ultimately we want to get to the very peak of the pyramid. Okay. At the very, very base of the pyramid are what are called the physical needs. Okay, those things that keep the human body alive. So some examples of this, if we were in class, I'd have you respond, but I want you to think about, what do we need as human beings to keep our body alive, our physical body alive? Okay, no, it's not things like love and emotion. Okay, it's things that we need to keep our physical body alive. Okay, things like water, okay, food. Okay, and in fact, you can live longer without food than you can without water. We need oxygen. Okay, if, for example, you were suddenly being deprived of oxygen, nothing else would matter to you. You would be desperate to get oxygen. Our physical body needs sleep. Okay, we need various things in order to keep our physical body alive. And if we are being deprived of any one of those things, we don't really care about anything else. We work to try to fulfill those unmet needs. So let's think back to yesterday's movie, okay, the Homeless to Harvard movie. Liz Murray was the main character in the movie. And when she was a very, very little girl, okay, some of the physical needs to keep her body alive weren't being met. Okay, so for example, if you recall the very first scene in the movie, it was kind of an icky scene. Okay, the very first scene in the movie, okay, they had been given some money. Okay, Liz Murray was actually holding this big wad of money. Okay, she and her sister wanted to spend that money on food. Okay, but her mom wanted the money to spend it on drugs. Now think about this. If somebody is physically addicted to a drug, as her mother was. Her mother was physically addicted to heroin. If somebody is physically addicted to a drug, doesn't that drug itself become a need? And that's why the mom was so desperate to get and buy more drugs. She and her sister, on the other hand, were hungry. Okay, and their physical need was food. And that's why it became a conflict. Okay, both of them needed that money to fulfill an unfulfilled physical need. And again, when you yourself have a physical need that is unfulfilled, that it is not met, that becomes our focal point. And that's why sometimes people act in desperation, maybe ignoring other needs, maybe even ignoring the law. Okay, when our physical needs to our body are not being met, that consumes us. Okay, once that is taken care of, the next thing that you then worry about is safety and security. Okay, we like to know that we are safe. We like to know that we are secure and that those things are being taken care of. That's why some of you lock your doors, maybe you use the buddy system, maybe you have security systems at home. Okay, we are more fulfilled, we rest easier when we know that our safety and security is not being threatened. Okay, again, think about the movie. Were Liz and her sister Lisa always safe and secure? I don't think so. In fact, if you recall, even as little tiny girls, they were running around the streets of New York City. Okay, something that I, as a mom, would have thought was mighty dangerous. But the reason why they were allowed to do so is because that entire family was still stuck down here. They were not having their physical needs met, so they didn't really care about this one at all. Once your safety and security is taken care of, then and only then are we concerned about love and acceptance or love and belonging. Okay, as human beings, we want to know that somebody cares about us, that somebody knows of our existence, that somebody loves us and accepts us. Okay, that is a very real human need. That is why, for example, let's say a new kid enters our school. Okay, we have 1,600 kids that go to the school. Okay, on the very, very, very first day, when a new kid enters our school, it is desperately scary. Okay, not that anyone's going to beat them up, so their safety and security isn't threatened. Their physical needs are being taken care of. But why it's so uncomfortable to be a new kid is because, at least on that first day, they don't know anyone. Okay, nobody knows of them. Nobody is accepting them yet. They're not part of a friend group yet. And that's why it's so desperately scary, is because a very real human need has been threatened. Okay, now Liz Murray in the movie. Okay, when she finally went to her last high school, okay, the name of her teacher was Dave. And Dave did something brilliant. Okay, he was fully aware of her need to be accepted, and he was trying to fast forward this, trying to speed up the process so that her classmates would accept her and include her. And he did something. See if you can think about how he manipulated that. I'm going to give you 15 seconds. See if you can think of it. Okay, time's up. See if you thought of it. Okay, when they were going over some test results, he kept calling Liz Murray new kid. And he kept saying, hey, new kid, new kid, new kid. And finally, one of the other kids defended her. Okay, and he said, geez, Dave, learn her name. She's been with us 2 weeks. And you would have noticed that the camera suddenly scanned to Liz's face. And with that boy defending her, she started to smile. Because allies in a war, those on the same side, suddenly bond. Okay? And so Dave, her teacher, was forcing the acceptance to go quicker. And suddenly she was bonding with the rest of the group. She could tell that they had accepted her. And now that was overcome. She belonged. And that would help her to succeed. And Dave, her teacher, knew this. Okay? Once we have fulfilled all three of these needs, then and only then do we have what is called esteem. Sometimes people will call it self-esteem. I like to call it self-confidence. Self-confidence and self-esteem are essential to making it to the top. Okay? We need to believe in ourselves. People who lack self-confidence really, really struggle to succeed. But the problem is we got to have all these things in place before we get to this. Okay? Now, there was one moment in time when Liz Murray suddenly realized she had worth. One moment. Okay? Prior to that moment, she was really struggling. Sometimes she'd go to school, sometimes she wouldn't. She was in and out of school. She was kind of venturing all over the place. And there was one moment that suddenly changed the way she thought of herself. See if you can think of it. Okay, that moment was she was walking into her last high school, and Dave, her teacher, was posting a list of the top 10 smartest kids in the school, or those kids that had received the best grades. And she said, "Hey, Dave, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm posting a list of the kids that are going to go visit Harvard." He said, "The top kids in the school." And he said to her, "You ready to go?" or something to that effect. And she said, "I'm not one of the top 10. And he said, "You're not just one of the top, you're the very top." And she was a little confused. And she looked at him and said, "I've always been trash." She had labeled herself as trash. Okay. And so therefore her self-esteem was mighty low. And he counteracted that and said, "You're not trash." He said, "You're the smartest kid in this whole school." And all of a sudden, that statement made her realize that she did have worth. And it was from that point forward that she really started to make headway. That's when she started to apply for scholarships. That's when everything started to fall into place. But she never would have achieved self-esteem or self-confidence had these other things not already been accomplished. Now, the problem is sometimes we can be on our way, everything is going great, and then someone says something nasty to us, and we start to fall, okay? And then we pick ourselves up and start to go, okay? Okay, and finally the last one, and this is the ultimate goal. Only after we have achieved our physical needs, safety and security, love and acceptance, and esteem, can we rise to the very top? And the very top is what is called self-actualization. Self-actualization is the ultimate. And basically, what that looks like depends upon who we are. There is not one perfect definition for this. Self-actualization can be defined as when we become the most effective that we're capable of. Okay, but the problem is we're all capable of different stuff. We have different IQs, we have different talents and abilities. But when you become the best that you can be, we can then say that you have accomplished self-actualization. And that again is the ultimate goal that we are trying to achieve. Okay, but again, you can't get here until you have finished all of these things. And that's why these lower needs are so very, very accepting or very, very important. Sorry. Okay, here's what you are going to do today. Okay, and this is kind of just a fun assessment. Okay, I have attached to all of this. Let me see if I can get to it. Here we go. This is a self-survey. I'm not going to collect it. I'm not going to ask you to submit it, but I will ask you to do it because it's kind of fun. It's called the Self-Actualization Inventory. And what you are going to do, it's attached after this video. what you are going to do is they have listed 28 statements. Okay? You are going to respond to each of these with one of these four answers. How often do you feel this? Very often, often, only sometimes, or absolutely never. Okay, now this is a PDF file, so here's what I would suggest you do. Get out a piece of paper and a pencil, write the numbers 1 through 28. You don't have to write the whole line here. And then after each one, respond A, B, C, or D. Okay? Once you have completed all 28, then you're going to compare your answers with the author. And with each of the 28, you're going to be given a number. Okay? So if, for example, with number 1, you responded with B, you're going to give yourself 3 points. Okay? Then with each of the 28, you're going to add them up, and you are going to find whether or not you are on your way for self-actualization. Okay, it's just a self-assessment. Okay, but again, this is a PDF, so you won't be able to respond. It's not interactive. You're not going to be able to write on it. The directions are on here if you don't understand what I'm saying. Okay, and the directions for page 2 are on here as well. But that's just kind of a fun self-survey.